What up, YouTube? This is an open letter to Jeremy Crawford. Hi, Jeremy. How are you? Everybody else, you can go ahead and click on the video anyway, but this is for Mr. Crawford. Anyway, this is an open letter to talk to you about how to better address the whole species race thing. I see what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work. I'll explain why in a moment. Also, I got an idea that'll actually work, and not only will it work, but it'll help fix power creep, the DM attrition problem, why you're losing most DMs to OSR games, and possibly even monetization fears. Unfortunately, I don't have anything about the OGL fears that are going on right now, so you'll just have to, figure those ones out on your own, I guess. All right, well, anyway, if you're ready, strap in. You strapping hunk of man meat, you. What? Anyway, don't know what that was all about, but we'll move on. All right, Mr. Crawford. First, who am I? Well, that didn't work. There we go. I've been DMing Dungeons & Dragons since roughly... What? Oh, no. Okay, I've been DMing Dungeons & Dragons since roughly 2nd edition. I'm a data scientist that works in the video game industry. I'm a former educator. I taught high school physics for 4 years, and then I wrote physics exams for the state for 4 years. After that, educated in both philosophy and physics, philosophy undergrad, physics grad school. I've been playing since 2nd ed, but mostly I've been getting by on pure unadulterated cleverness. That's my brand. I don't really know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. Shh, don't tell anyone. But I'm going to lend that cleverness to you. Examples of my cleverness is this guy right here. Yeah. This is how I exercise. Strap the controller to this bow, and that's what my channel is usually about. And I talk about cleverness, and I can't reach it, right? That's embarrassing. Come on, stop moving. All right. But anyway, what I'm going to talk to you about is the race species thing and why it's not going to work. It's not going to work. There's two main reasons that it's not going to work. One, just go look at your orc description and look what you said in the recent Goliath video where you announced the race species thing in this one D&D playtest. Just take a look at that. Powerful build. Now, the problem that people have had with orcs or race in general and why you moved ability scores out of race and into background is because of prescriptivism, which is saying, oh, you assume that orcs are big and strong and dumb, which is, of course, even more of a problem because the whole orcs in Tolkien's language about orcs makes it seem like they're supposed to be black or Asian people, and it gets ridiculously bad at that point. So you move the ability scores into backgrounds. Instead of calling it race, you called it species to avoid colonialist language. Great. But things like powerful built in the orc, you're still going to get tagged for prescriptivism. There's really no other way around that. Well, there is a way around that, which I will get to in a little while. And also the nature of who answers your surveys. Because the people that are going to point out that it's prescriptivist later are not people that are paying attention to 1D&D and Unearthed Arcana. They're just not. The people taking the survey are not going to be the people that are going to try to cancel you later. That's just not who they are. I mean, let's go back to the whole video game controversies in various time periods. Do you really think Jack Thompson, the lawyer who got disbarred in Florida, potentially because of his crusade against video games going on 60 Minutes and all that, do you think he actually plays video games? The answer, of course, is no. He probably hasn't played a video game in his life, right? And the people that are going to be tagging you for this stuff, they don't. If they play, they're going to be casual players. They're more interested in other things than D&D, and they're not going to be involved in the playtest. They're going to wait till you've published books before they nail you for it. And you want to make sure that if there's something that's problematic in your book, it's in the fluff, not the crunch. So if it's in the fluff, you can just delete a paragraph. I've seen you do it. It's good. Good job. But if it's in the crunch, that could be a lot more problematic. You don't want to end up with, Gary Gygax's alleged having -1 to strength for females or anything like that. That's just not where you want to go. And I know that's not where you want to go, but they might try to nail you for prescriptivism anyway. So that's why the whole race species thing's not going to work. I could go into more details about that, but I don't really want to. I don't feel like getting involved in that kind of internet drama. I'm just going to say that you will get nailed for prescriptivism. But there's a better solution out there. And, fun fact, it matches both your and Gary Gygax's, there we go, that's a name, for some reason that I can't say, because I'm recording, it goes with your general design philosophy around 5e, your philosophy around 5e, his philosophy around the original Dungeons & Dragons game, but having that sort of design philosophy overview really will help that it matches that. So it matches it even better, actually, but we'll get there. All right, so that's why it'll fail there. DM attrition and power creep. This is a big one. So I remember there was an article recently about a DM shortage in New York City, and there's a DM shortage almost everywhere. And I mean, it's funny because I complain that I'm having trouble getting my group together, and DMs complain that they have trouble getting their players to the table, and yet there's other people that can't find a DM to save their lives. Part of that is because I don't want to play with randos because I don't know who they are, and I don't want to deal with people's politics, honestly. I just really don't want to deal with it. If I know who you are and I kind of know your politics, then I can kind of navigate that, and it's fine, and most people I know that I hang out with and I play with are just reasonable human beings, which is really good. Reasonable human beings and functional adults. That's the key in 2023, we hope. But anyway, I don't want to play with randos. And I think that's why a lot of DMs are having trouble getting their players together. But the reason that there's so few people willing to DM is all the pressures put on dungeon masters, which includes, of course, adventure design. Now, race in particular, or species, sorry, in particular, is a big problem for adventure design, especially in the exploration pillar. When people talk about whether something is balanced or not, they usually look at the combat pillar, which is why, for example, variant human was considered the most powerful thing in 5e until, of course, custom lineage and Tasha's came along. But here's the problem with the custom lineage and Tasha's. You're essentially saying, hey, dark vision is worth a skill, right? Because variant human, you get a skill and a feat. Tasha's custom lineage, you either get a skill or dark vision and a feat. So you're saying that dark vision is worth a skill, which is ridiculous, because there's no feat that grants you a permanent second level spell effect. Or you have a feat that gives you 2 cantrips and a first level spell, but nothing that's just like, here's a second level spell, and it's permanent, and it's a feat, go. I haven't seen it. Maybe there's something like that. If there's something like that you've seen, let me know in the comments, but I haven't seen that. And that's problematic, and you're saying that that's worth a skill. Why? Because it's dark vision. It has no effect on combat, but has a lot of effect on exploration. If you're kind of an old school DM and you want players to worry about how many torches they have, and you want to play that level of kind of dungeon as survival horror, like original D&D kind of stuff, you can't do that. It also, I guess this is where I'll bring up this design philosophy thing. You said, Jeremy, can I call you Jeremy? I'm going to call you Jeremy. You said, very brilliantly might I add, that you didn't want to have an option that players felt like they needed to take. Of course, this was in reference to getting rid of the whole -5 attack plus 10 damage thing, which never really matched to D&D philosophy in my mind anyway. So, like, while I definitely took them as a play when I got to play one-shots and stuff, it never, like, meshed with me in terms of how this works. You also got the math on advantage, disadvantage being plus or -5 wrong. It's, like, more like 2.5, but that's another story. I think there's a channel called Stand Up Maths who did the theoretical work on that, and when I was watching it, I did a Python thing with him. I'm like, I just want to make sure this is true, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he's right. But anyway, maybe you guys need a data scientist instead of just underpaid data analysts. I didn't apply to a job with you guys when I was looking for a job in 2020, I swear. Anyway, but what I'm saying is when you justified that, you said you didn't want there to be a choice that people felt like they had to take. There's power creep going on with races, and it feels like these are options you have to take. It also makes it feel like there's options that you shouldn't take. What I mean by that is, all right, let's say I'm playing a human, but everybody else is playing something with dark vision. They're going to be like, oh, you don't have dark vision. Now we have to carry torches because of you. And it makes people feel like they can't play something without dark vision because they're going to bring the party down. And there's also the power creep thing. All right, so humans are considered the most powerful. You nerfed humans by making the first level versus 4th level feats thing, which is fine. That's fine. But then you have things like Arakakra. They have flight. So you're saying that a skill and a feat is equivalent to a permanent 3rd level spell. Oh, but they can't wear heavy armor. So that's a combat minus. but they still have flight, and heavy armor doesn't matter if the troll can't touch you because you're 30 feet or 40 feet in the air, right? Like, it doesn't matter anymore. You're bypassing pit traps. You're bypassing half the exploration stuff. Mazes, like a hedge maze, fly over it, right? There's so many things that you can just avoid in the exploration tier with things like flight and dark vision and many other racial benefits that people don't see the combat value to, but that's because you're forgetting the exploration pillar. The exploration pillar is where these things really start to come up, and a little bit the combat pillar, because again, if the troll can't touch you, it doesn't matter that your armor class is lower, because in order to fly, the troll can't touch you. You're 30 feet in the air. Nothing. And that's another thing that you haven't considered. But where's the power creep come in? Well, if the Aarakocra gets flight, great. Then you would release the Owlin. Not only does it get flight, I think it has like less feet of flight, but it also gets dark vision. So dark vision's worth like 20 or 30 feet of flight, or a little bit of movement. And that power creep is ever present. And you want to prevent that power creep, because that power creep makes it harder for DMs to run the game. It also makes it kind of hurts your wallet too, because it makes older products like Curse of Strahd, maybe, just as a for instance, or Waterdeep Dragon Heist. It makes those things not runnable anymore, because everyone's playing an Owlin. There's a scene that may or may not be called Rooftop Chase in one of those books, and it doesn't matter. We can fly. If everybody can fly, that encounter is just gone, right? And some of the other encounters are gone as well. And pit traps don't matter. Certain encounters don't matter. You're really limiting older products, which you could still be selling to newer DMs. See how this works? So you're hurting your products with the power creep, and you're hurting DMs with the power creep. And eventually DMs, they start restricting things. Now, if your DM restricts only player's handbook stuff, the players don't bother buying the other books because their DM won't let them use it because of power creep. But if the power creep wasn't a thing, it wouldn't matter as much. When I DM, for example, I don't allow people to use spells from outside the player's handbook because I want to limit the spells that I have to keep track of in my brain. And I think that's another DM attrition thing, is just too many spells. But that's a whole other story, and I'm not going to tell you not to release more spells. I'm just going to advise DMs to limit them like I do. But feats I usually let people use from other books, because feats are usually balanced. And that's an important consideration here as well. But yeah, the power creep just gets ridiculous, and you cannot run games for these characters anymore. Like, Owlin sharpshooters are just going to ruin a lot of planned encounters. And sometimes even map resources. Like, imagine if you spend a lot of time making this windmill map to work in Roll20, and then they're like, well, we're just going to fly outside and shoot through the windows. Right? Like, it doesn't matter anymore. And that can be problematic. So you're losing DM to DM attrition, and you're gaining a lot of power creep with these species as you write them. They're also getting a little bit ridiculous. And to kind of go back to the prescriptivism just a moment, you mentioned with the Goliath that you wanted another big hulking character, as if I can't be a hulking character as a human. And that sort of mentality, and then they getting more spells or abilities, or I can grow to large when you're 5th level, like that. I mean, growing a character to large, that's going to be more of a limit for the character than the DM, because like, well, they're 5-foot corridors. Good luck squeezing. So that's kind of like the DM kind of goes, I made it more difficult for you. Ha 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 ha. But the reality is, like, it's designed for like medium or small creatures, and getting abilities as you level doesn't make sense. I mean, humanity, we gain things as we level. Mostly we gain, things like cancer. Right? That's a biological effect that happens only at higher level, being older. But they're never good things. Aging doesn't usually work out well after a certain point. It's mostly downhill. Don't get me started on that. But anyway, so this is a problem, but I have a potential solution. And the concept that I bring to you is concept. No, Jeremy, man, I didn't just have a stroke. I wasn't distracted thinking of your beautiful eyes and went with concept twice and just messed up my brain. No. My concept is called concept. Now, what is a concept? Oh, it's a one-line description of the character that you build with some skills and a few feats. All right, so how would this work? Much like the backgrounds, where you build your own background now, you would just build your own concept. And then you would have sample concepts in the book. Sample concepts like human noble, elven guardian, right? Like just picking like certain aspects of the world. And these are great for two reasons. One, lore dumps. What do elves look like in the Sword Coast? Well, you can describe the different facets of elven society through these concepts that players can choose through. And they can pick them, or of course, they can make their own, or they can edit the ones that exist. But you have all of this sort of lore that you can put in there. And it's a one-line description. So like, all right, let's say I wanted to make a human I failed out of bard school. I'm a human that failed out of bard school and has turned to a life of crime. That's my concept. How would I make that character? Well, I would take skills like perform, maybe a couple of musical instruments. I would take the musician and magic initiate feats. Those are first level feats that are perfectly valid to take. Those are my 2 feats for my concept. And I would call myself medium and get my 30-foot speed, because in part of concept, you would pick your size. So small, 25-foot speed, medium, 30-foot speed. And I would pick, for my type, humanoid, because nothing changed that. I'll get to that. And then, of course, in parentheses, human. That's my type line on the character sheet. My concept line, failed bard student turned to life of crime. And I would take rogue as my class and take magic initiate and musician feats to kind of be like, this is what I learned in bard school before I dropped out, right? Like, this is where I got to in bard school. I almost graduated, didn't quite get there. Now I'm a criminal. And there's my concept. All right, great, but how does this fix race, right? This isn't, oh my gosh. So I put a picture of my daughter up on top of my monitors, and she eventually falls down every time I do this and every time I record. So sorry about the noise. Sorry about the noise there, Jeremy. All right. Now I know you got that sexy little head of yours thinking, where's that coming from? What does this have to do with race and how to get rid of race from D&D, but yet keep it? Well, lineage instead of race. You kind of went with that word with Tasha's. I was actually thinking of something different than I remembered Tasha's custom lineage, and I'm like, you already have this word in the game, and it's great. So for example, there'll be feats. They are level 1 feats, like a Fey lineage. Right? And when you build an elf concept, so if I have a concept of an elven blade singer, there we go, right? Or elven guardian, either one of those would take the feat Fey lineage. And that gives me that kind of elf stuff, right? But it's not elf, because I could also just be playing a Fey. Because I mean, all right, story time. Had a player, potential player, she never ended up playing. But she wanted to play a fairy. That's all she wanted to do was play a fairy. But there's no way to do that in D&D without grabbing some homebrew race that's just OP. If you thought your stuff was power creep, oh god, look at the homebrew stuff. Anyway, that's problematic. But originally, Gary Gygax had just been like, all right, fine, make a, well, fairies use magic, so make a magic user. And that's it. That's your character. You're now a fairy. Like, it's not, they didn't have any special rules for this stuff. We're used to these special rules now, but we can do lineage feats, and that would literally change. So, like, if she wanted to play this game, she would pick small for her size, so 25-foot speed. She would take the Fey lineage feat, and maybe some other feat that gives her some sort of Fey ability that she needs. All right, so how do we deal with stuff like Dark Vision? Am I going to throw Dark Vision on all of these lineages? No. Dark Vision is a permanent second-level spell. There's no feat that matches that. Make Dark Vision its own feat, with the prerequisite that you have a non-humanoid lineage feat before you take this feat. If you want things like flight, which please, for the love of all that is holy, no flight. But if you want things like flight or limited flight or gliding and that kind of thing, make it a feat. If you're going to take because you can take, it's fine to take a feat to limit something, right? Like, there's plenty of feats that get rid of annoying things in combat. Like, I can't cast my spells as an attack of opportunity. I'll take this feat. I can't use ranged weapons to a guy 5 feet in front of me without being at a disadvantage. I'll take this feat. So there's already precedent to use feats to get rid of an annoyance in combat, use the feat to get rid of an annoyance in exploration. But if it's a feat, you're not going to have a party where everybody but John has dark vision, right? Like that's just not going to be the way it works. You're going to have like one person with dark vision, and that gets a lot more like if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, the Peter Jackson ones, and they're always relying on Legolas's eyes because his eyesight's better. That's what you're going to get, which is a lot more interesting and more fun, and that makes the feat a meaningful choice. You chose to have dark vision. You weren't required to have, you weren't like one of the three races that don't have it, and therefore everybody just gets mad at you for picking it, right? That's what you want. Players can build the character that they want, the concept that they want, and the best part about it is, nowhere in the book is there going to be the word race, right? You just say your subtype, in parentheses, will be elf when you pick an elf concept. And when you're building your own concept, you can pick whatever subtype you want, talk to your DM about what subtypes are available for your character. Boom. Done. It's fixed. It's not prescriptivist, because yeah, you might have an orc concept with powerful build, but no, this is just an orc warrior. Orc warriors would have a powerful build. They spend all of their time swinging giant axes around, right? Maybe the orc shaman wouldn't have that. It's not prescriptivist. It's just a concept. It would be kind of like going, football players have a powerful build. Yeah, they do, especially linebackers. That's not a, prescriptivist comment. That's just the truth about football players. And that's the level where your crunch will be at, is no, this is the concept that had the powerful build, not because they're orcs, and therefore you avoid the prescriptivism problem. Now, of course, since you're going to be attaching lore to all these concepts, you might get some of the fluff problems that you got, like with the Hadozi, but you know what? Just delete a paragraph, and it's good. Also, for the love of God, bring back ideals, bonds, and flaws. Just bring back ideals, bonds, and flaws, and write them for these concepts. These concepts can be great roleplay tools, and a book with a bunch of concepts, some feats, some spells, some equipment, players will buy it. And that brings me to microtransactions. That's what everyone's fearing. Everyone's fearing microtransactions. And the way that we're fearing is we see that this cool tabletop 3D minis on a tabletop, but we're afraid that like, oh man, I want my mini to have a cloak. That's a couple bucks. I want my mini to have a sword. Oh, that's a couple bucks. We're scared that you're going to make us pay for individual customization options. That's what people are afraid of. But right now, you release a book, right? Let's say you released, I think it was Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. No, it was Xanathar's Guide. You released Xanathar's Guide. But the only thing from Xanathar's Guide I wanted at the time was the Drunken Master or Drunken Boxer subclass for Monk. The drunk monk, the drunk subclass for the Monk. That's all I wanted. D&D Beyond let me buy just that. What I suggest is that you attach the tabletop options to content in the book. So if you have the equipment chapter of the player's handbook, you have those basic items that your mini can hold, right? When a new item is released in a new book, if you have that book, you get that item for your mini. Now, clothing would be special. There'll be some standard outfits that come with the equipment chapter, but then concepts would have their own clothing. Whatever art you use to advertise the concept, you include those clothes there, and those hairstyles, and those horns, and facial features, and ears, and tails, and all that. When you have a concept that has that, like when you have Fallen Tiefling Noble as a concept, then you get tiefling horns with that, right? And that's how you can get your microtransactions, because maybe people do just want one or two things, and they're going to grab it from a concept. They'll find a concept that has the things that they want, and they'll buy it. Or they'll just buy the book, which sells a book, and then they get all of it. So people that are afraid of microtransactions are like, no, there's a legitimate way to get this. Just buy the book and you get all this content. Great. Fine. Right? And if you really, really want it, you can buy it, and there's your microtransactions, and there's your monetization. So players will be more motivated to buy a book because they get all these cool concepts, they get all this RP information, they get all this stuff that they can read and look at, because a lot of people are just reading the books anyway. And when they play on the virtual tabletop, they get all the options that came from that book. See what I'm saying? All right, so do I have a recap? And yeah, all right. Well, Jer Bear, hope I didn't make you uncomfortable with the hitting on you. I actually thought I was going to hit on you more, but I ended up just not. So it's not because you ain't sexy, baby. But anyway, thought I was going to hit on you more. Didn't end up hitting on you that much. It's all good. But yeah, I hope you take some of these ideas and run with them. I hope you come up with some great ideas. Oh, because like the power creep thing is an issue, but if you balance every lineage thing to a first level feat, you're not going to have the power creep issue anymore, but you're still going to give players all of the options that they'll ever want. And they can create their own options using these pieces of text. Because right now, people are just like, hey, I want to play an Owlin because I want Flight and Dark Vision. It's like, no, it's not. No, stop. Please, just stop doing this to me. But now it's like, all right, if you want those things, you're picking them over other things you could have gotten. I still think Flight is OP, and I honestly, I think Dark Vision's a little OP, but I know you're going to have to put it in there because people are going to want it. So that's going to have to be its own feat. Require lineage, but you should probably put a warning on it that this is kind of a powerful feat because it gives the equivalent of a second level spell. So DMs might want to restrict it. But anyway, that's my idea. That is my concept. My concept was, of course, concept. And yeah, that's my video. Peace out, Jer Bear.